In a game of poker, two can play pretense the employee has to be loyal to their employer. Well, I call bullshit because that couldn't be far from the truth. And if you have a boss like mine, you would equally see this ideology as trash. I guess I should say had because it is all in the past tense now. I quit. Well, before I was fired, this would not have been the case, but at this point, nothing is stopping me. The good part is that I get to share my side of the story. This is the story of how my boss fired me after I dealt him a similar hand as he dealt me. It is how my boss treated me like shit, thinking I could not do anything about it. Truth is, at the time I was fired, that idea he had of me was probably right. But it has been a year now since the dust has settled, and this circumstance has changed me more than I could have thought. My name is Dave, and from the very first moment I stepped into the bustling offices of Wordsmate, I knew that this was where I belonged. As an aspiring writer, the opportunity to intern at one of the most prestigious writing and creative companies in the city felt like a dream come true. But the problem here was that at this time, I was oblivious to the fact that this experience would test my dedication and passion to my lifelong dream in ways I could never have imagined. From the onset, the palpable energy of creativity permeated the air, invigorating my soul with every breath I took. I was eager to prove myself, to show everyone that I had what it took to be a valuable asset to the company. The promise of a full-time position after a successful 6-month internship was the beacon that guided me through those initial days. I tackled every task with fervor, immersing myself in each project as if it were my own masterpiece. Writing copy, crafting compelling narratives, and brainstorming innovative ideas. I embraced every challenge with a hunger to learn and grow. The days were long, and the nights even longer from trying to get into a set mood for inspiration, but I relished the exhaustion that came from pouring my heart into my work. It was, after all, what I wanted. I did not mind having to go the extra mile to get to where I wanted. To be honest, I think it was always the voice in my head learning from the words my mother said before I moved out of our apartment that made me beat myself up the most. She thought writing wasn't a job. She believed I should make use of my accounting degree to get a job somewhere in the corporate part of the city like my late dad would have wanted. But that was never my plan, and the degree was to keep her off my back for as long as I could. I think her words began to affect me, such that my inner voice frequently reminded me and berated my work that I was not good enough to be a paid writer. Getting an offer from Wordsmate reduced the volume of that voice, and the days and hours of unpaid overtime that I worked was to finally silence that voice. Upon my acceptance of the internship role, days turned into weeks, and I found myself forging connections with colleagues who appreciated my dedication and passion. My hard work did not go unnoticed, and I began to earn praise from clients and supervisors alike. Even Mr. Anderson, the enigmatic and often stoic boss, occasionally offered a nod of approval, a silent acknowledgement that spoke volumes. My fellow interns and I formed a close-knit community, encouraging one another and sharing our triumphs and struggles. The support we offered each other was an anchor in the swirling sea of creative pressure that surrounded us. Together, we navigated the challenges, celebrated the victories, and reminded each other that we were destined for greatness. The promise of a full-time position served as a driving force, motivating me to push my boundaries even further. I sought out new challenges, eagerly volunteering for projects that demanded innovation and creativity. The sense of purpose that filled my days made the long hours feel like moments suspended in time. As the end of my internship drew near, a mixture of excitement and trepidation flooded my thoughts. The moment I had worked tirelessly for was within reach. I could taste the success, feel the weight of my accomplishments, and see myself as one of the new permanent members of the Wordsmate. However, as destiny would have it, the blissful bubble of anticipation burst with a single visit to Mr. Anderson's office. The same man who had occasionally acknowledged my efforts now delivered a crushing blow to my dreams. His cold, emotionless gaze conveyed a verdict that shattered my heart. Dave, I regret to inform you that your performance during this internship has not met our expectations. We won't be offering you a full-time position. Stunned and disbelieving, I struggled to find words to defend myself, to prove that I had poured my soul into this company. But Mr. Anderson's mind seemed irrevocably made up, and my pleas fell on deaf ears. With a nod, he dismissed me, leaving me standing there, feeling like a discarded pen that had run out of ink. As it would turn out, the pain of rejection was worse than I had thought. It weighed heavily on my shoulders as I gathered my belongings and walked out of that office for the last time as an intern. The world that had once felt full of boundless opportunities now seemed cruel and unforgiving. My dreams were shattered and my confidence waned. It was like my mother's words and my inner voice broke loose in my memory once again. I was close to tears, but for some reason, I could not find them running out of my eyes. I couldn't help but wonder if I had been blind to the signs, the subtle dismissals, the lack of full recognition, the way my ideas seemed to vanish into the shadows of anonymity. It was as if I had been dancing to a melody only I could hear while the rest of the world remained indifferent. But I was sure I was not. There were times my direct team head had praised something I had written. Once, I was given the task to rebrand a section of the company's website. If I was as bad as Mr. Anderson had made it sound, I would not have been tasked with the role. I decided to meet up with Cynthia, one of the interns I had bonded with. I explained what had just happened to her, and as I expected, she couldn't believe it. It took her seeing my sunken eyes to see that I wasn't joking about being fired. She thought that maybe I needed to wow the boss with something. Make him see how much of an asset I would be to the firm. I did, or at least I tried to. The result was getting the door slammed in my face, yet deep within the darkness of that moment, a flicker of determination ignited. I refused to let this setback define me or undermine my worth. As I stepped out, I knew that my journey was far from over. A fire burned within me, fueled by the desire to prove my worth. The days dragged on into weeks, and my search for a new opportunity became both a struggle and a quest for vindication. While I faced rejection from various companies, my determination never wavered. I want to believe that it was the excess of quiet space to think things through that made me begin to really question why I must have been fired even before I could be officially recognized as an employee under Mr. Anderson. For some reason, something did not add up, but I did not know what. All I knew was that I was fired because he said I didn't match up to what was needed. While trying to move on, I found myself navigating through a tumultuous sea of emotions. The bitter taste of rejection still lingered, and the wound of being cast aside by Wordsmate remained raw. Yet, I was determined to heal, to leave this chapter behind and start anew. Little did I know that an unexpected revelation awaited me, threatening to reignite the fires of anger and vengeance. One evening, as I mindlessly scrolled through my social media feed, a particular post caught my eye. It was an article, a piece of work I had poured my heart and soul into during my time at Wordsmate. My eyes widened as I saw the name attached to it. Simon Anderson, my former boss. My heart pounded in my chest as I read the accolades in the comments section. People praised Mr. Anderson for his brilliance and innovation, lauding his creative prowess. But I knew the truth that this work was mine, a creation that bore the sweat and tears of my labor, now paraded as his own. A surge of anger and betrayal washed over me. It was as if I had been dealt a second blow, this time to my creative integrity. My mind raced, trying to comprehend how Mr. Anderson could claim my work as his own, seemingly without a hint of remorse, especially since he said I was not good enough. How could I that was not going good enough to garner the praises they rained on the work that was supposedly his? As I dug deeper into the post's origins, the realization dawned upon me. My boss never intended to pay or acknowledge my contributions. He had used me as an unpaid intern to harvest ideas and creativity, eager to capitalize on my dedication without offering anything in return. Anger mingled with sadness as I was forced to see the harsh truth. I had been a pawn in his game, a tool to extract ideas that would elevate his status while crushing my dreams underfoot. It wasn't just about losing a full-time position. It was about my work and talent being stolen, leaving me stripped of credit and recognition. I couldn't fathom the audacity and heartlessness of it all. How could someone with such power and influence stoop so low? The pain of betrayal sliced through my resolve like a sharp blade. But as the initial shock wore off, a new emotion emerged from within me. I needed to make him pay. I needed my voice to be heard. And I was going to stop at nothing in showing the world the kind of person he was. I knew what I had to do, use the same means of pretense, gather as much information as I could, then came back on social media to announce to those that have called him creative that while he might have been so at one point in his life, all he was now was a sad harvester of the sweat and toil of young creatives. The first thing I did was to ask for help from my contacts that were still in the firm. I needed to know what they thought of the whole scenario. The idea was to get an objective view. But more than getting an objective view, I realized that it wasn't a me thing. It was something that has become somewhat of a trend in the organization. Mr. Anderson had a track record of firing interns just shortly after they become employees, or before they could become one after the period of unpaid internship was over. There were tons of interns that date back to years before I even walked into the office to apply for a role as an intern. And for some reason, no one had bothered to ask why the interns had been fired without due cause. None of the interns had a voice to lay claim to their work that the boss stole after they had been sacked. I was more furious than I was when I left his office that day when he told me I wasn't good enough. I was pissed at myself for not seeing beyond my nose. I was pissed at other interns who had faced a similar problem and kept mute, and I was finally pissed that I sat in my room in tears at the blatant show of injustice. I took on the role of an avenger of some sort, an anonymous crusader armed with the truth. On social media platforms and blogging sites, I shared my story and that of other wronged interns, unmasking the facade of Wordsmate. The response was overwhelming. Former interns, employees, and even clients stepped forward, sharing their experiences of exploitation and deceit. The unknown voice became a symbol of resistance against a system that preyed on young, talented minds. But with every step I took, I knew the risks were escalating. Exposing Miss Anderson's machinations could have severe consequences, not just for me, but for those who dared to support me. Fear gnawed at the edges of my determination, threatening to undermine my resolve. However, I drew strength from the community that had rallied behind me. We were no longer isolated voices. We were a chorus demanding justice. This wasn't just about one intern seeking revenge. It was about shedding light on an industry plagued by exploitation. I meticulously gathered evidence and testimonies from former interns and colleagues. The weight of responsibility grew, knowing that the truth rested on my shoulders. But I was no longer alone. My fellow interns had become comrades in a battle against injustice. The movement gained momentum, drawing attention from media outlets and industry insiders. The support we received was overwhelming, and the pressure on Mr. Anderson and Wordsmate intensified. Yet he remained silent, perhaps hoping that this storm would eventually pass. It was a usual case of ignoring it till it loses momentum. Plus, there was no face to the voice of accusations, but the community was far from done. In a way, it was like everyone decided it was the right time to come after those that have stolen their works in time past, or those that have removed their names from getting recognition for the part they played in one work or the other. It was massive, but I was not about to let him off the hook. The time had come to confront Mr. Anderson, to hold him accountable for his actions. Armed with the weight of truth and the unwavering support of a united front, I decided to reveal my identity and face him head-on. This time, I wasn't sneaking in as an intern hopeful. I was walking in with purpose, ready to face Mr. Simon Anderson, the man who had exploited my creativity and that of so many others. It was time to shed the cloak of anonymity and confront the man responsible for my shattered dreams. Stepping into the sleek lobby, I was met with the familiar buzz of creative energy that once inspired me. But this time, there was no awe or wonder, only a fierce fire burning within, fueled by the countless stories of those who had fallen victim to Mr. Anderson's cunning schemes. I made my way to the reception desk, where a polite but wary receptionist greeted me. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves, and requested to see Mr. Anderson. I had anticipated resistance, but to my surprise, she nodded and picked up the phone to announce my arrival. I reached Mr. Anderson's office door, took a deep breath, and knocked. The response was a cool, "Come in." I pushed the door open, and there he was, the man who had held my dreams in his hands and callously cast them aside. Mr. Anderson looked up from his desk, surprise flickering across his face as he recognized me. "Dave, what are you doing here?" he asked, attempting to maintain his usual air of authority. My voice was steady, carrying the weight of every intern who had been exploited. "I'm here to talk about the truth, Mr. Anderson," I replied. my words tinged with a mix of anger and determination. He chuckled, attempting to brush off the gravity of the situation. Ah, I see. Still caught up in the little social media stunt, are you? I guess I should have known it was you. You should know that won't change anything. Right? His plan was to make me cower in fear at his words, but my eyes locked with his unwavering. It already has, I said. People are aware of your exploitative practices. They know the truth about how you've used interns like me, stealing our ideas and creativity without offering fair compensation or recognition. Mr. Anderson leaned back in his chair, a hint of unease creeping into his demeanor. You don't understand how this industry works, Dave. We can't credit every intern for their ideas. It's just not practical. Oh, I understand perfectly, I retorted. You exploited us because you thought we were vulnerable, that we wouldn't dare speak up. But times are changing, Mr. Anderson, and your reign of exploitation is coming to an end. He attempted to dismiss my words with a wave of his hand. This is just a phase, a little uproar that will eventually die down. You can't do anything to stop it. You're making a big mistake, Dave. I can make sure you never work in this industry again. With that, I walked out of his office, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and satisfaction. I had faced my fears and confronted the man who had once held power over me. The battle was far from over, but this was a victory for justice, for creativity, and for all the interns who had suffered in silence. The good part was that I recorded the entire conversation, and after uploading it to the internet, people began to boycott the organization. To be honest, I am a bit scared of what this would mean for my writing career, or if I even have a career in writing anymore after bringing down one of the most prominent writing firm's bosses. But at that point, I didn't care. I couldn't bring myself to care after seeing how he had gotten away with his crimes for so long, and at least before WordsMate was forced to close down, I got the recognition for the work that I deserved. For now, that is enough. Homie duped your friends off their money, so we crashed their wedding. One of my friends and our large friend group had a business idea after school that we all jumped in on. Her name is Catherine. She was like the least ambitious of us all on campus. All of us started our businesses, and we tried to get her to join in with us, but she was always like, there's things cut out for some people and some things not cut out for them. Not everyone will be an entrepreneur and stuff. We accepted that, but then during breaks and long holiday periods, we also tried to get her to apply for a job, internships, or junior roles, but she also wouldn't. Her excuses were something like they need someone more qualified. I can't juggle school and work. I'm too busy to get a job this holiday. At some point, it started getting obvious to us that she just was not ready. On one occasion, our mutual friends and I joined in on telling her that she had given the same not qualified excuse for so long. Someone who really wanted it would have sucked it up and gotten the necessary qualifications by then, but not Catherine. She preferred to live off her parents' money with no plans for securing a future for herself. We all knew that the end of the road was ultimately going to be ugly, but there was another consolation. She had her rich boyfriend, Mark. Mark knew Catherine's family. Mark was just what her parents wanted for her, and she loved him so much. There was no doubt that she was going to be the first of us to get married after school. As for me, I was planning to further my education by getting a master's degree. My friend Kennedy was going to go into her dry cleaning business. Lola was becoming a chef, and Benedicta found an opening in a marketing agency. There were more of us, but not to be mentioned here. You might be wondering why a couple of achievers like us hung out with someone like her. Well, it wasn't really a thing then to cut people off, and she was our friend long before we started becoming ambitious in college. Anyway, the idea was that she would get married to her rich boyfriend, and that would be the end of her friends bothering her about making money for herself. Well, graduation day came, and we said our goodbyes. Some of us traveled back to the countries we came from to study, and others moved away to live in newer locations. We stayed in touch with each other. I bagged my degree, and other business owners started to make waves in their industry. Video calls were more or less about us ranting about adult life, comparing the life we had on campus to what we had now, and arguing about which of us had a better life. Catherine was never about that life, while some of us were coming back to the group chats with news about her new restaurant opening, new houses, new cars, new man. Catherine was always taking pictures in fancy places, pictures of her by herself in Paris. And when they went together to Dubai, it flooded our group chats. It was like Caddy was trying to prove to us that she didn't need to be hardworking like the rest of us to be affluent in life. Finally, Mark proposed to her. He was a gentleman, so nobody was surprised. He could not have dated her that long to leave her hanging. Truly, what all of us were waiting for was the news, and we had it. So it came down to us asking Catherine when the wedding would be and where it would be held. Somehow, Caddy, who used to be so vibrant and responsive in the group chat, came off as busy and totally ghosting us. Naturally, we assumed it was all because of the wedding preparations. A girl has to choose her dress, pick a hall, and organize things with her event planner. But still, no one knew the date of her wedding. It took weeks, but later, Catherine came online again, and instead of replying to the messages we left her in the group, she went to each one of us privately. Apparently, she had a new business idea. My concern was reasonable. Was this business idea so important that it trumped all the other questions we had about her wedding? Was it that serious? If the business idea weighed higher than the wedding in Catherine's scale, then it's two things. Either the scale is broken or Catherine went through a life-changing turn of events that reorientated her mind. It turned out to be the second one. Honestly, we're still not sure what made Catherine want to get a job. It had to be connected to the wedding. Someone said that Mark was not willing to pay for the expensive wedding that she desired. Another person said that she checked the financial demands on a growing family and realized that if she wanted to have kids, she had to reduce her lifestyle. That was traumatizing enough. But from our calculations, Mark's income alone should have been able to sustain their family. Something else was up, something that was our inherent fear. It has not yet been confirmed, but we believe that Mark dropped in ranks where he worked as his pay was not quite high as it was before. This kind of woke Catherine up to the reality she had to face because the wedding was soon and it had to be perfect, just like she already imagined it to be. So Catherine started a thrift-closed business where she sold classic dresses, palazzo pants, chiffon tops, and work blazers to chic women. Many of her clothes were on the expensive side, but since we were supporting our friend and most of what she sold was incredibly fashionable, we decided to buy some things from her. However, Catherine in the shop business was a little different. There were things that were on pre-order, and we could only get the things we bought if we pre-ordered them. To help out, I bought some gowns, shoes, jackets, and camisoles, all totaling to the amount of $60. I know people who bought up to $105 or even $200. Come on, this was our friend, and she was finally doing the business we so much wanted her to do. Plus, whether she came clean or not, we understood that they needed the money. So, Catherine posted some pictures. And as she posted them, we could choose the ones that we wanted and forward our invoice to her with our desired sizes and colors, obviously to get her more customers. All our friends forwarded these pictures as many as we could, to all the people we knew. We pushed her young business like it was ours. Now, this is where the real problem started from. If it was left at just a friendship circle thing, we could have easily let go, but this was more. Others had reordered and sent their money, and Catherine had told us to do. We were excited to help and proud that we could get a number of women to participate too. But sometimes your good ideas turn out to be bad ideas. When it was time for the shipment to be made and for the goods to be delivered as promised, Catherine came up with so many excuses as to why her goods had not yet been delivered. A month turned into 2, and it wasn't getting clear that we were going to get those goods that we ordered. But I had colleagues, neighbors, and relatives on my neck asking me about my friend's business. When were they going to get their clothes? Apart from me, others also had people to deal with, paying customers who had given their money to receive their goods. How were we supposed to disappoint them all? Catherine went awfully quiet. She wasn't responding to any of us. We started having conference calls just because of her to know who had finally reached out to her and gotten a response. Poor Mark, too, he wasn't out of this, but he assured us to get Catherine to respond to us. But the chick was too afraid to face us one-on-one. What happened? Maybe any of these few things. Her lack of exposure in business finally caught up with her because she needed to learn that it's not everyone you meet that you can do business with. It was probably the business of a fraudster, and now he had all the money and he disappeared. Or it was that Catherine herself was the fraudster, and she was holding on to our money somewhere, knowing she was never going to release the goods. Or it could actually really be delayed goods, or maybe the ship sank. Whatever, just anything to get our money back. Or at least the dresses. Weeks passed again, and I don't know what others started telling their friends and families so that they would loosen their tight grip on our necks. I felt very much betrayed, embarrassed, and foolish. This was the same with everyone who tried to help. Others were going on and on about how helping people has always been a bad idea. I think at this point, everyone gave up on Catherine and her boyfriend Mark. She definitely knew that one day the noise would go down, and after that, she could come out okay again. Well, as for me, I genuinely forced myself to forget about it. I knew Catherine was fine and would be fine in the end, so I had to mind my business and leave her to mind hers. There were speculations that she had duped her entire family and friends, so that there wasn't even one person left to invite her to her wedding, so they did it small. That was how we liked to joke amongst ourselves. Surprisingly, one of those days we heard about Catherine's destination wedding. It wasn't going to happen in the States or in one of those very expensive, exclusive mouth-watering weddings, but it was going to take place back in her African home. The person who shared it in our group chat made fun of her that they would finally have to go small. But I knew that these African weddings would cost her nothing less than a couple of million if it first started as a joke. Someone brought up the idea of crashing in and causing a scene. I remembered that in all the Nigerian weddings I'd seen, a lot of money was being thrown around. We could each count our money back and get our specific amounts each. Some liked my idea. Others just thought it would be better to actually crash the wedding and bring everything down because Catherine didn't deserve any of it. Whatever our various reasons were, we all found ourselves buying plane tickets to travel to Nigeria. We found out the exact date and time of the wedding. We booked a hotel very close to the venue, and everything was set. Catherine thought she was so sneaky by not telling us about her wedding. We stood by her through everything on campus, but because she messed up, that was her way of saving herself from us. Come on, we were originally supposed to be the bridesmaids. Mark knew this, but he was still letting the wedding go on without us. He knew his wife was a fraud, and he also never talked to us about the money we had lost. So any last strand of pity for them had left me long enough. I was not in Nigeria to have a civil conversation. We were there to make sure the wedding was not a success, and we were going to do it the hard way. I don't know how Kennedy got us passes into the place. Security in these weddings are always top-notch, but we got one ticket, and that was all that mattered. Catherine was going to have one of the worst evenings of her life to remember for the rest of her days. We were there too early, so we stayed parked in our car under the tree for fear that someone might remember us. There were 4 of us in the car, representing a larger number of 6 girls. It remained the goal to interrupt the wedding whether or not we could get our compensation, just as long as Catherine cried for what she did to us. We waited for quite a while. It had to be when the couple had entered inside and dancing was going on in the party that we sneaked in, got to the mic, and ended the whole thing. Someone even talked about wrecking the cake, others about taking gifts with us, but I think that would have been criminal. So we did as planned. Catherine had a live stream going on. It was streamed on all her social media platforms. She probably thought that we, her friends, were back in our different countries watching as she thought she could make us furious with a few pics on IG too about their traditional wedding pictures. Unfortunately, her wedding was only a secret to no one. When we saw that it was time for the bride and groom to dance in, we got ourselves ready. Relatives and friends danced around them, spraying wads of cash. We stepped down from the car, fully adorned in our Nigerian attires, makeup, nails, hair, everything. 2 of us marched to the stage, while the other 2 of us went to pick up as many notes of cash could be found on the floor. The look of dismay on Catherine's face was to die for. Even Mark stopped dancing. The music stopped, and when I got to the mic, I told everyone to stay clear of us. We were not party crashers. We were her original bridesmaids who she duped and ran away to Nigeria with our money to have her wedding. We were there to recover everything back and to make everyone know that they were celebrating with a fraudulent couple. The mothers and aunties started to beg. Catherine was crying. I ended my speech with, "Well, happy married life." This is the speech from the original bridesmaids. The whole party was too stunned to speak. Everyone was too frozen to stop us until someone called security. Maybe it was Mark, but that was his mistake. We could have gone without causing too much damage, but when the security showed up, we started resisting, objects were broken, and the party crashed completely. People started running home for their safety. The gift table was overturned. If there was any gift remaining that wasn't broken, Catherine was very lucky. Well, anyway, we were able to bribe these men, and we left scot-free. Back to the Instagram Live and other streaming channels. The comments there were so hilarious. The wedding had to end on that note, and Catherine, well, she came back to us to ask for our forgiveness.